Okay, we'll try again. Okay, you guys hear me okay?
Yes, much better.
Okay. I don't know why this recurs so much. I have to check it out. Especially at this time. I don't know. I don't know why that is. So yeah, I think we're almost finished with this parak, with this chapter. Couple things left over here to do. So we'll check that out. Yeah, so we're doing chet, I think, and so I'll read it in the bit Yosef. I'm not sure exactly where we stopped, but yeah, I'm sorry, it's Zayin actually, Zayin. So anyway, it says in Zayin that if you made a mistake in Rosh Chodesh, right? That's what we're talking about. What does he do there? He has to do that, right? Insert after the blessing is over. So regarding that, right, there was a doubt in the Talmud. Uh, Number one, we said if he mentions the word Simcha there, and also, do you seal it or not? So regarding this, says Bet Yosef, Hakol b'perek shosha shachlutz, also in the Gemara. Upasak Arif Lamed Amud Aleph over there, the Rif Paskins, the lo chatim, that we don't seal it. That's what we do, by the way. We don't seal it. V'chen dat Rambam, also Rambam says that v'katvu God Maimon So says this rabbi who's a commentary on the Rambam, Sheken Pasak Raviyah. The rabbi also says that. Udelok, and it's not like the halachot gedolot, halachot gedolot. Shepasku lechatom. They say that you should seal it. So how do you seal it according to them? Mekadesh Yisrael v'Rashei Chodashim, like this. Sanctifies Israel and the Rosh Chodesh. Talmud Yerushalmi, like the Yerushalmi says. Oh, so the Yerushalmi does say to seal it. All right. Ve'arosh katav b'shem Ari, and the Rosh says the name of the Ari, the end lishanota mishabat b'yom tov. Don't like make it different. Don't than Shabbat and Yom Tov. V'yesh lechatom ba. Therefore, you should seal it. He says. Aval simcha mistabra shelo yomar. But he says when it comes to simcha, you really, he says better. It's proper not to say it. The lo shayach simcha b'Rosh Chodesh. Why? Because simcha is not really relevant to Rosh Chodesh. Okay, great. There's a whole, by the way, since we got into this discussion of simcha, so there's a lot of interesting things about this concept of simcha. I'll explain to you guys a little bit what I mean, what I mean, because it's actually important to understand this. First of all, you guys know what simcha means, right? First question.
Yes, Kavod Harav. Happy, no? Happiness?
Yeah, it means like joy, right? Okay,
Or
so
joyous.
yeah, joy, same thing. So okay, fine. So simcha is joy. Um, so there's a verse that says, if I'm not mistaken, it's in Tehillim, right? Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, bo'u lefarnu b'inana. What does this mean? Right? Serve God in with joy. So the verse tells us to serve God with joy. So in other words, according to that, you should always be joyous. You know what I mean? It's not talking about the holidays. So then why does it tell you on the holiday to have simcha on Yom Tov? What's the festivals? What's that about? If you're supposed to have simcha all the time, then what difference does it make? So the answer is, that on the holidays you're supposed to be like especially joyous. That's the thing, right? Not just on like the regular way, like really, heavy duty, like intensely joyous. They're supposed to be on the holiday. So that's why there's a difference between the regular daily simcha, that a person is supposed to have, and then right the holiday simcha, which is supposed to be more intense. So it comes here, right? The Bet Yosef, it tells you, right, the name of the Rosh, right, that Rosh Chodesh is not really a time of simcha. So what does that mean? It's not considered to be like the holidays, the festivals, where it's really like there's a special, issue of simcha there going on. Now I ask you another question, right? Which holiday is supposed to be the most sameach, the most simcha? Which holiday? According to the Torah,
Passover?
you know what it says about Sukkot? It says v'haita ach sameach. It says you should be only joyous on Sukkot. So Sukkot has like the most simcha lichora. Apparently out of all the holidays, right? That's what it says. So even though the holidays are all like supposed to be with simcha, but Sukkot is supposed to be the most sameach of all of them. So you see, right, that there's different levels of simcha. That's one thing you gotta understand. Um, then I'll tell you another interesting thing is that it says in the Zohar Kadosh something a little bit shocking. I think I maybe I posted this one time. I don't remember, but I think I posted it. The Zohar Kadosh says, right, that really outside of Israel, there is no simcha really. The real simcha is only in Eretz Israel. So in the galut, in the diaspora, there is no simcha. So it says the Zohar Kadosh that uh, therefore, it says when you're outside of Israel in the galut, it's not really you shouldn't be like displaying simcha there. That's what it says. Rather, you should be like kind of like serious, like kind of there's a word for that in English, I'll tell you. I'll tell you in a second if I remember it. But anyway, right? There's a word in Yiddish also. The Ashkenazim. They say you have to be stark. Stark means like kind of like serious kind of approach. Something like that. Yeah. So maybe the word in English is like austere. Something like that. You're not supposed to be really like with simcha. That's what the Zohar says. There's also another interesting thing is that it says in the Talmud, also brought down in Shulchan Aruch, that in this world, right, that you're not allowed to fill your mouth with laughter in this world. You ever hear of this halacha? There is a halacha like
No,
this.
no.
Yeah, you're not allowed to fill your mouth with laughter. So why? What's the reason? Because it says in the pasuk, right? Az imale schok pinu, right? In the prophet. What does that mean? When Mashiach comes, then we'll have simcha, and then we'll really be laughing, enjoy, like that. But in this world, you shouldn't be laughing. Don't fill your mouth with laughter. Why is that? Because we live in a dirty world. It's like nothing to laugh about, really. You know, it's a very sad situation we live in. You know, so what are you laughing about? Like, well, this is not a world of laughter. So therefore, right, that's what it says in Halacha and Talmud says this like that. Okay, so you see, right, there's all kinds of contradictory things going on with simcha and laughter. There's another, Gemara somewhere which says about Rabbi Udanasi, Now, Rabbi Udanasi, you guys know who he was, right? Uh, he was uh, he was after the destruction of the temple.
He was the
You know what I mean? Like 2 generations after destruction of the temple.
he was the one who composed the Mishnah, no?
Yes,
Who compiled the Mishnah, right?
he's the one who wrote the Mishnah. He wrote it down. Yeah. What you're saying is right. So now, here's the thing, right? There's a story about him, that one time, he was, first of all, it says about him, that he was living in the north, like somewhere like in Tiberia or something like that, in the north of Israel. And what happened was, right, that one time, first of all, they say, he underwent like great suffering, Rabbi Udanasi, Hashem decreed upon him all kinds of suffering. So he was like, in excruciating pain often. So, he wasn't exactly in a very jovial kind of state of life, Rabbi Udanasi. Well, not really. So it says about him, that one time he, he laughed. And because of that came, famine to the world. Because one time he laughed. Right? So you see from there that, you know, laughter in this world is not such a great thing, really. Especially for great, rabbis like that. Because he was living after the destruction of the temple, as I told you. So, there was really not much to laugh about there. So there's a lot of interesting things about this, simcha and laughter, all kinds of things. So therefore, right, in order to reconcile all these conflicting teachings, I can tell you one thing for sure, just from my experience, like, I was 15 years, with the great rabbi, Maran. Believe me, there was nobody like him in this generation. Not even close, Forget about it. So why do I tell you that? Because I remember, I watched him for 15 years. I never saw him laughing, ever. Not even once. Uh, he would like, even if he would like make a joke, sometimes he would like, like a half a smile he would give off, a half, like barely a half there, something. It was with difficulty. That was about the best you could get out of him, you know. So the truth is, the big chachamim, that I saw in Eretz Israel, they're not, these are not jovial people, they're not laughing and chuckling and stuff like that. It's not a part of their life at all. So filling your mouth with laughter is not a good thing, right? It's not allowed even in this world. That's what it says. Only when Mashiach comes, we'll fill our mouth with laughter. That's what it says. But thing is, so then what do we do with the pasuk? Right? That says in Tehillim, "Ivdu et Hashem besimcha." Serve Hashem with simcha. It says. So how do you serve Hashem with simcha if you can't laugh? Good question, huh?
With Torah.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. That's good. I like that. But the truth is, that there's an insight over here, which I want to tell you, which is very important to understand. As we said, right, in the galut, you're not supposed to display simcha, outside, outwardly. We're not in the state of simcha over here. You know why? Because the connection that we have with Hashem in the galut is very haphazard, like very disoriented. It's not really a healthy connection. And that's why there's no simcha in galut. So because of that, the proper thing for a person to do, it should be inside, it should be sameach. Inside, in your heart, in your mind. But outside, don't show it so much. You know what I mean? Like, don't display simcha so much on the outside. I remember, there was this one. There are some people, who are not so knowledgeable, and they try to do things, which is above their level. So there was one guy. I remember. I met him in Yerushalayim, and he was trying to learn like Kabbalah. He thought he was a Kabbalist. Kind of like the fantasy world. Whatever, right? So I remember what he used to do was, it's because the Kabbalah says you should be sameach, you should be happy. So whatever. So what he was doing is, going around, and laughing all the time, like clapping his hands, like this, He looked like a total jackass. Excuse my language. You know what I mean? Total jackass. He didn't know what he was doing. But that's not really what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be sameach inside. But not to walk around, clapping and like, chuckling. And it's not what you're supposed to be doing. It's a person who doesn't understand what he's doing. That's the whole idea. So why do I tell you this? Because we're talking here about these things. We're contrasting, Shabbat and Yom Tov and Rosh Chodesh. Whether they do have simcha, they don't have simcha. Should you mention simcha? You shouldn't mention simcha. So generally, a person should try to be sameach, all the time, but inside, inwards, not towards the outside, making outward gestures of simcha. That's not the Jewish way. In Galut, anyway, right? In Galut, we're not like that. So that's the different things, different elements of simcha. But the bigger chachamim, the bigger rabbis that I saw, they never were laughing. I never saw any of them laughing. No such a thing like that. There's also a funny Gemara, in the Masechet Brachot, if I'm not mistaken. Very, very strong Gemara. You know what it says, right? That one time it says, Rav Asher, he went to a wedding, and So what happened, right? They started to get a little bit rowdy there, you know? You know what I mean? You know what I mean by getting rowdy? Like, being very jovial, like clapping their hands and jumping and this. And it started becoming like a crazy thing, like right, a little bit out of control. So you know what he did, right? He took like some kind of a big, glass vessel and he broke it, like in front of everybody. So why did he do that? He wanted to stop them, like he didn't want them to be that jovial. They were going too far. Can you imagine such a thing like that? That's what he did, you know? So we see from there, that in Galut, you shouldn't display too much simcha. It's not really. We're not in that state of simcha in Galut. That's what it is. But if a person is sameach inside, you know, that's a good thing because that makes them function well. It gives them more success in life. On the other hand, one time they asked the Arizal, you know, who reached a very high level in wisdom, right, in Kabbalah, whatever. They asked him, "How did you reach such a level like that? What's your secret?" Because he attained things which are like supernatural, basically. So you know what he told them? He says, "Because I had simcha. I lived my life with simcha. So again, right? Does that mean the Arizal was jumping around, clapping his hands? No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about inside he had simcha. That's something else. That's a very good thing. Okay, very good. So I give you a little bit of a taste of what this means, this whole thing, right? What's the idea there? It's good to know these things. Okay, so let's move on a little bit, right? So as we said, right, when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, there's no simcha there, but there is a machloket regarding if you do seal this blessing or you don't, right? So it seems like the Sephardi right rabbis here are saying that you should not seal it, and the Ashkenazi rabbis are saying that you should. So we may find that difference also in the Shulchan Aruch. We'll see, right? We'll get when we get there. ורוקח בסימן רכ"ה אחת כתבה בחתימת שם פסיקתא רבתי, כיוון שהרי"ף והרמב"ם, look what it says, right? So says the Bit Yosef, since the Rif and the Rambam maskimim with the lachatim, since they both agree that we don't seal it, hachinaktinas is that we don't seal it, right? So the Bit Yosef paskins, we don't seal Rosh Chodesh. That's what we do, the Sfardim. I can tell you, right? And if you look in the Sfardi Sidur, that's what you're going to find. Question is, what about the Ashkenazim, right? So we're going to see in the Ramah what he says about that, right? We'll take a look there. Okay, so והיא לא עמד עד לפתח הטוב ממיטיב, לא הדר לרשע. So he says, if he didn't remember until he started Hatov Metiv, so then, right, you don't go back to the beginning here. Why? Because Rosh Chodesh is not really so crucial like the other holidays. תאמר שמואל טעה ולא הזכיר ולא ראש חודש, right? גם זה פרק שלושה שאכלו. So it says, Shmuel says there that for Rosh Chodesh we don't go back to the beginning, right? It's not that crucial. Okay, so let's move on. So as I told you guys yesterday, probably the reason is because when it comes to Yom Tov and Shabbat, we do have an obligation to have seudot on those days. But Rosh Chodesh, there is a mitzvah, but it's not really an obligation to have a seudah. So therefore, that's probably the reason why. We'll see, right, when we get there. So it moves on here. מה שכתב רבנו פירוש דבר שצריך ברכת המזון. Okay, so I'll go back to the Torah, and there's some more stuff to read there. Right, so we mentioned this yesterday already in the tour. We said that since you're not really obligated to eat on Rosh Chodesh a meal, even though you're not allowed. Okay, sorry about that. It went out again. So anyway, as we said, right, that since you're not allowed to fast on Rosh Chodesh on the one hand, but you don't have really to have the Seudah, you don't have to eat bread. And this is the reason why we don't go back for that. Because the Seudah is not really essential on Rosh Chodesh. Okay, so we'll move on. I hope you guys hear me. So let's move on. Um, then he goes on here. מה שכתב רבנו פירוש דבר שצריך ברכת המזון. There's more in the tour. I have to go back there. I'm sorry, but here we go. Let's go back there. So it says here, כתב רב יוסף שאם נזכר קודם שפתח טוב נתיב, אומר ברוך שנתן אפילו בלילה. So he says, if he didn't remember, before if he did remember, before he started the next blessing, the Tov Metiv, he will say, Baruch Shnatan, Afilu Balala, even at night he would say that, he says, Afagav de Gabe Tfilah, even though regarding prayers, in Machzirin Oto, we don't really tell him to go back if he didn't do Yalev Yavo. Al Shichat HaChodesh, if you forgot that, Balayla, Anamila Chazir, that's only to return. Aval Yosef Bracha, Afilu Balayla Nami. But it says, when it comes to adding a blessing, even at night we add it. So it's not the same thing. So he says, if Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbat, he's killed Shabbat velo Rosh Chodesh. If he mentioned Shabbat, didn't mention Rosh Chodesh. Hayom Rabbi Yosef, the Rabbeinu Yosef used to say, Shin Machzin. We don't tell him to go back for that. Again, right? Rosh Chodesh is not critical. So therefore, if he already started Tov Metiv, even though at this point, right, there's no way for him to not to eat. Why? Because it's Shabbat. Comes nevertheless mishum hai miuta, but it says because of this minority lo tiknu lechazir, the rabbis didn't decree, to go back. V'gam chiyuv achilam, so it is also the obligation to eat the hayom of this day mishum Shabbat. It's because of Shabbat anyway, right? Not because of Rosh Chodesh. Katav Rabbeinu Yechiel. So it says Achi, right? It says my brother Rabbeinu Yechiel. He wrote Zal. He says there are those who argue with this. So he says I'm really inclining to go like that. He says the proof is that because of the day, right, that is obligated for prayers. Since it's not really, there's no way for him not to eat. He has to eat. He has to bless again. Says everybody agrees that if he forgot Gam Shil Shabbat, also Shabbat, and remembered before he did Tov Metiv, Kol Lo, he's going to include it there. He's going to say, right, blessed is the one who gave Shabbat for rest. Rosh Chodesh is and Rosh Chodesh for remembrance. So if he opened already, he started Tov Metiv, he goes back to the beginning, he says, Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh. So then he's going to mention Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh, like in the beginning. So this rabbi says, right, this my brother, he says, Rabbeinu Yechiel, he was the brother of the tour, this guy. V'seuda Zal, V'seuda Gimel Shel Shabbat. What about the sheet for Shabbat? Tzarich iyun. So it says we have to examine that. Im machzrin oto, if we tell him to go back or not. Rabbeinu Tam de Amar, according to Rabbeinu Tam, that says Shiotze b'minin targima, that you can do for Seuda sheet, right? Even other types of foods, snacks, whatever. But lo pat without bread. Vaday en machzrin oto. So there we don't tell him to go back for sure. Afilu im achal pat, even if he ate bread. The dami Rosh Chodesh, because that resembles Rosh Chodesh. The uladivya parshim tzarich pat. But according to the ones who say that you do need bread, the alfinan mi gimel pamim. So we learned that from Tichtiv Hayom Gabe Min Shehu B'Makom Pat Tzididu B'Machazin Oto Ad Ken Hashanah. So right, so according to one who says that you do need to eat bread for Seder Shlishit, so then he would have to go back according to that opinion. Okay, again we got cut off. I'm sorry about that. We got cut off again. I'm sorry. So I'll go back there. We're almost finished with the chapter. So anyway, right, it says over here, so according to that, so in other words, we have a machloket here, right, in the Rishonim, whether Seudah Shlishit on Shabbat, the third meal, requires bread or not. Right? According to Rabbi Tam, you don't require it. According to the other opinion, you do. What's the halacha, by the way? Do you have to do bread on Seudah Shlishit? So the halacha is that you do, lechatchila, you have to have bread. Unless you don't have it, whatever. So you could use something else. You could use mezonot or some other thing. But if you do have bread, you should have bread at Seudah Shlishit. Are you guys with me? Are you hearing me what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, good. So that's it. We're done with this tour. Let's go to Bet Yosef Shulchan Aruch. Maybe we can finish a chapter tonight if we get lucky. Let's see. Okay, with all these interruptions. So anyway, right. כן, פשוט תוספות רבינו יונה בראש ורשב"א, כתב רשב"א, דמינא דשמינא דהא דעסיקנא דשבתות בימים טובים דעל כורכך אכיל מחזין אותו הנה מילה בלילה הראשונה. So he says from here you learn that that which we say, right, on Yom Tov and Shabbat, especially Yom Tov, right, that he has to go back, and do it again if he didn't say the insert. He says that would be the first night of Yom Tov, Davka, only the first night. Shehi choba bechilat pat, because there it's an obligation to have bread. Because we learn from the first night of Shel Pesach, Hakul hu shar onot the Yom Tov, vafilu b'Yom Tov harishon. So he says, but the rest of the time, the other meals of Yom Tov, even the first day, we don't tell him to go back. Because if he wants, he doesn't have to eat bread. That's what it says also in Tosfot. פרק הישן, וכתב הראש, it says the ראש, פרק השלושה שאכלו, in ברכות, על זה, regarding this, ומי הוא קשה דמשמע, but he says it's difficult, why? Because it implies יום טוב דומי על ראש חודש. יום טוב is like ראש חודש. ראש חודש דווקא ביום, but ראש חודש is only in the daytime, דאילו בלילה, because whereas at night, אפילו בתפילה, even with תפילה, אין מחזין אותו, we don't tell him to go back, even with תפילה. הילקח נראה לרי דחייב אדם לאכול פת ביום טוב. So he says, therefore, the Ri holds that you are obligated to eat bread on Yom Tov, משום דשמחה, because of שמחה, משום חלקהו חציו לאכילה, because you should do half eating and half right study, Torah study, whatever. ועיקר האכילה הוא לחם. And he says the real eating is like bread, וכן דת תוספות. So by the way, there is a machloket also regarding this, that is there an obligation to have meals with bread on Yom Tov, Some say you have to eat bread on Yom Tov, and some say you don't. The halacha is that we do eat bread on Yom Tov, so you should try to, have bread on Yom Tov. But on the other hand, maybe Yom Tov Sheni, right, which is only from the rabbis, maybe there's more room to be lenient, and eat it without bread, because it's only rabbinical. I can hear that. I can hear that claim. Okay, that's interesting. But the proper thing to do, is to eat the meals on Yom Tov with bread, if you can. Sometimes what happens is, like you're very full because you had like 2 days of Yom Tov, so it's like, oh my God, like you ate so much, you can't eat anymore. So you want to eat something a little bit lighter, right? So either what you can do is one thing is you can have like a very small amount of bread, kazait, or the other thing is, you can have just like something, a different food altogether without bread, eat something else, and that could also probably do the trick, for the second day. That we can be lenient with the second day, maybe. Okay, that's the idea. So, ויקרא אכילה לכם, וכן דעת התוספות, that's what it says in תוספות, וכן דעת הר"ן, also the Ran says this, פרק הישן, וכן כתבו את מרדכי פרק ב' דביצה, לכן רבנו סתם דבריו, so he says, therefore, the two paskined, גם ביום טוב וגם יום טוב, ולא חילק בין סעודת לילה הראשון ולשאר הלילות. He didn't differentiate between the first night and the rest of the nights. So meaning what? That the proper thing to do, as we said, right, is to have, all your meals on Yom Tov with bread. That's the proper thing to do. ומיהו חול המועד, משמע דדינו דכראש חודש. But what about חול המועד, right? Which is the intermediate days. So there, really, you don't have to have bread, only if you want to. Right? You could just have, anything else you want to eat there. Right? Whatever you enjoy, having some, right? The barbecue, whatever you like to eat on the Chol HaMoed makes you happy, right? Whatever. So yeah, some stuff like that. So וכן כתב רסמ"ג, this one says רסמ"ג, והכל בו בהלכות ברכת המזון, לא זה ברכת המזון. אבל הרב, בתשבץ, תשבץ says, סימן רישות ד' כתב, בכל המועד אין מחזין אותו, בכל המועד we don't tell him to go back if he missed יעלה ויבוא, כי אם בסעודת שחרית, only this is the morning meal, בשל לילה, and also the night meal, אבל לא אוכל בחצי היום, but something in lunch, if he's having lunch, he says, סעודה אחרת, right, different meal, אינו חוזר, he doesn't have to go back. It's not really an obligation. ורבינו ירוחם כתב, right, but רבינו ירוחם says, בנתיב חלק ב', תנראה מדברי הרמב"ם, from Rambam, he says, it seems, Rashi also, Rashi, שאף על פי שחייב לאכול בשביעית, של החג, even though he has to eat, right, on the 7 days of the holiday, right, on the festival, right, י' ד' סעודת 14 meals, אחד ביום ואחד בלילה, one in the day, one at night, יכול להשלימן בפירות, but he says you can do it with fruits, whatever. In other words, you don't have to have bread. So on Chol HaMoed, really the truth is, right, we're not obligated to eat bread. So therefore, if a person forgot to say Yaleh V'Yavo in Birkat HaMazon, he would not right, go back and do it again. And that's the practical difference there. Okay, so we have a little bit to go to finish today. I guess we'll try to finish this one at least. Try to finish Zion if we can. Okay, so כתב רבי יוסף שאם נזכר קודם שפתח הטוב ומטיב, so it says, right, that this rabbi says, Rabbi Yosef, if you remember, before he started Tov Metiv, he says, Baruch Shanatam, he does the insert there. וכן כתב מרדכי, so it says מרדכי פרק 3 שאכלו over there, וכן כתב רשב"א בפרק תפילת השחר, that's what the Rashba says also. ואם חל ראש חודש בשבת, so it says if ראש חודש comes out on Shabbat, והזכיר של שבת, and he mentioned Shabbat, ולא של חודש, he didn't mention ראש חודש, היה אומר רבי יוסף, so this rabbi used to say, שאין מחזיר, we don't tell him to go back. וכן כתב מרדכי also, this שם, בהגות מרדכי, בהגות מרדכי, פרק ב' שבת, כתב שתי סברות, he wrote both these opinions, ודעת רשב"א, פרק 3 שאכלו, what does רשב"א say? כדעת רבנו יחיאל, like רבינו יחיאל, תכיוון דעל כורחו אכיל אפילו טעה בשל ראש חודש, so he says, since he's eating, right, because of Shabbat, he has to eat as a meal, there's no choice, right? So therefore, even if he made a mistake in Rosh Chodesh, machzin oto, you have to go back, berek habayit. So in the end halacha, so it says, right, berek habayit, it says halachically, what do we do, right? Bottom line, right? There's so many opinions over here. Naktinan ke Rabbeinu Yosef the safek brachot lekel. So it says we go like Rabbeinu Yosef. Why is that? Because right, when there's a doubt regarding blessings, we don't bless it. So therefore, there's no reason to go back and do it again. Okay, great. So we'll do Shulchan Aruch and we'll stop there. Okay. So says Shulchan Aruch over here, Im ta'a v'lo izkir ba shel Rosh Chodesh, right? If he didn't mention Rosh Chodesh in Birkat Hamazon, what does he do? He forgot to mention it, right? Ben bayom ben belala, whether it's yom day or night, doesn't matter. Omer. So what does he do? Right? He puts this insert in there, right, in the end of the blessing. What is that? Baruch shenatan Rosh Chodeshim le'amo Yisrael zikaron. Right? Blessed is the one who gave Rosh Chodesh to his people Israel on a day of remembrance, for remembrance. Ve'eno chotem ba, he doesn't seal it, as we said, right? We don't seal that. That's only if you remember before he started Hamatov V'Mativ, the next blessing. But if you didn't remember until you started that blessing, he doesn't go back at all. Just finishes it, right? As we said, it's not crucial. Because he's not obligated to eat bread on Rosh Chodesh, as we said. They should be obligated to do Birkat Hamazon. Okay, great. So, so says, right, Shulchan Aruch, what about Chol HaMoed? It's like Rosh Chodesh, right? Same thing. We don't go back if you forgot to say it. So once you missed the insert, right, and you started Tov Metiv, just go back, right? Finish it. No, don't go back to the beginning. Finish it off. So says the Ramah here, so says the Ramah, but it's possible maybe we could say in the Rachamans, put it over there. The truth is we don't really do this, but if you want, you could. Nobody's going to stop you. כמו שנתבהר לגבי על הנשיאים, like it says גם הנשיאים, סימן קפ"ז, ואולי יש לחלק בין ביעלה ויבוא, יש בו חזקת שמות. So it says maybe the difference between יעלה ויבוא and that, because there's names of God there, ואין לאמרו באותן, he shouldn't say it for no reason, right? It's maybe like in vain kind of. So that's the custom, he says. So therefore he also says, right, the custom is not to say this in the Rachamans, if you missed it. So then he moves on. What about if Rosh Chodesh and Shabbat together? Falls the same day. So he mentioned Shabbat, he didn't mention Rosh Chodesh. He didn't say Yaleh Ve'avo. So he didn't remember until he started Atov Metiv. He doesn't go back, right? That's it, we're done. So the general rule is, right, we don't go back for Rosh Chodesh. Not like the other opinion that says we should go back because it's Shabbat. We don't pass like that. Okay, great. So, Shabbat, what about if you forgot also Shabbat? If you remember before he starts Tov Metiv, then you should put the Rosh Chodesh and Shabbat together. Say them together in one shot. One little insert there, right? Including all of them. So, Be'omer, what does he say? Shenatan Shabbatot Limunucha, he gave Shabbat for rest, and Rosh Chodesh for remembrance. Ve'im patach Tov Metiv, right? So if he opened already Tov Metiv, Choser Rosh, he would have to go back to the beginning, right? Since he missed Shabbat, he didn't do the insert for Shabbat. That's crucial, right? Okay. So as we said, right, then he has to go back to the beginning. Maskir Shel Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh. So then you're going to mention both Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh. Since you're doing it again, right, might as well, do both of them, right? Why not? What's stopping you, right? There is one that says like this, another opinion, right, that we saw in the Beit Yosef. If you forgot both Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh, and if you remember before it started Tov Metiv, he gives like, he puts an insert there with both of them. And you seal it with Shabbat, and you don't seal it with Rosh Chodesh there. Okay, so let's just get this straight, right?